Hey guys, in today's video, I bring you an incredible and chilling story. Let's meet Callista Everhart, a nurse who literally died for 3 days and had an unusual experience. She met Jesus, walked the golden streets of New Jerusalem, and witnessed the judgment of souls. But what he revealed to her will change everything you think about the afterlife. Before we start, leave your like, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any content like this, and activate the bell to receive all notifications. Now, get ready for this intense and transformative journey. Rain lashed the road as I drove home after a long, exhausting shift at the hospital. My eyes were heavy with exhaustion, but I forced myself to stay focused. All I wanted was to get home, hug Ethan, my husband, and kiss Lily and Connor, my children. The radio played soft music, and I tried to lose myself in the melody to keep sleep away. Just a few more minutes, I thought. The road was wet. The asphalt reflected the headlights of the few cars that were still driving at that hour. It was then that everything happened. Suddenly, headlights appeared in front of me like 2 spears of light. There was no time to think, no time to react. A violent crash filled my ears as the car was hit. My body was thrown back roughly, the seatbelt holding me tight, but the force of the impact was like a crushing punch. The car spun, rolling over at least twice before crashing into a pole. The windshield glass exploded into 1,000 pieces, and one of them cut my forehead. The metallic taste of blood invaded my mouth. The sound of the world around me became distant, muffled. I tried to move, but a searing pain ripped through my chest. The smell of gasoline invaded my nostrils, and a pang of despair shot through my heart. This can't be happening. My vision became blurred. My eyelids felt heavy. In the last moment before the darkness swallowed me completely, I heard voices in the distance, sirens, hurrying steps on the wet road. Someone shouted, "She's alive. We need to get her out of here now." But my mind was already letting go. My body felt distant. A strange silence took over me. The pain disappeared. The fear dissolved. Then, without warning, something happened. Suddenly, I was there. But at the same time, I wasn't. The silence was absolute. No pain, no heaviness, no physical sensation, just an indescribable lightness. I blinked, trying to understand what was happening. I still felt present, but something was different, very different. Then I looked down. My heart, if I still had one, sank at the sight before me. My car was completely destroyed. The hood was dented as if it had been bent by an invisible force, and the windshield glass was shattered into hundreds of shiny pieces scattered across the wet asphalt. And then I saw myself. My body was there, trapped in the hardware, motionless, pale, unrecognizable. But I was up here, floating, observing everything with absurd clarity. That's not possible. I saw the paramedics running to my car. One of them knelt beside me and pressed 2 fingers against my neck. His expression hardened. "She's losing a lot of blood. Pressure is dropping fast." Another paramedic, a woman with her hair tied in a ponytail, held a defibrillator in her hands. "The pulse is weak. We are losing her." The words echoed inside me, but at the same time they didn't affect me like they should have. I knew what they meant. I knew it was serious, that my life was hanging in the balance. But I wasn't afraid. In fact, I had never felt so much peace in my life, an inexplicable peace, an absolute serenity that seemed to encompass every particle of my being. There was no pain. There was no despair. And then something changed. A light. It appeared above me, soft at first, like a distant glow in the darkness of the night. But as I looked at it, it became stronger, more alive, radiating warmth and love so pure that it seemed to call to me. Without having to move, I felt myself being attracted by that light, as if an invisible force was surrounding me and pulling me upwards. The scene of the accident began to disappear. The sound of paramedics, sirens, rain, everything became more and more distant. The light enveloped me completely, and then a new world opened up before me. The light enveloped me like a warm hug, filling every part of my being with a love impossible to describe. It was not an ordinary light, like that of the sun or a lamp. It seemed alive, pulsating, charged with an energy that enveloped and welcomed me. At first, I saw nothing but the bright glow around me. It was as if he was floating within an ocean of golden light, weightless, painless, without any negative sensations, just peace. And then, little by little, something began to appear in front of me. A figure approached, emerging from the light as if it had always been there. Its glow was even more intense, but it was not blinding. I could see him perfectly. He wore a white robe, radiant, and his eyes, oh, your eyes, they were deep, infinite, filled with a compassion and love that surpassed anything I had ever experienced on earth. When he looked at me, I felt as if he knew me completely, as if he had seen every moment of my life, every pain, every joy, every mistake. And still, he loved me without any conditions. My mind knew before my lips could even formulate the question. Jesus. My voice came out in a whisper. He smiled. A smile that wasn't just a gesture, but an explosion of light and warmth that filled everything around me. Yes, my daughter, I am here. The words were not just heard. I felt them inside me as if they were engraved in my soul. Suddenly, all the weight of my life, all the worries, fears, and insecurities just disappeared. I was no longer the tired nurse, the worried mother, the devoted wife. I was just me, and I was loved. Tears rolled down my face without me noticing. Did I die? I asked, hesitantly. Jesus continued looking at me with that infinite tenderness. Your journey is not over yet, but there is something you need to see. Before I could ask what it was, I felt his gentle touch on my hand. The moment his fingers touched mine, we were enveloped by an even more intense light, and the scenery around us began to change. Earth was left behind, and before me something appeared that I never imagined I would see in life. The light around us began to dissipate, revealing a new world before me. My eyes widened at what I saw. We were standing in front of an immense gate, made of a single sparkling pearl. It seemed alive, reflecting colors and lights that I couldn't describe. When I touched it, I felt a gentle warmth, as if I was being welcomed by something that knew me deeply. Jesus smiled beside me. Welcome to the New Jerusalem. The gate began to open without any sound, and what I saw beyond him left me speechless. It was an immense, glorious city, with a beauty that surpassed anything my mind could conceive. The streets were pure gold, but no ordinary gold. They glowed with crystalline transparency, as if light flowed through them. The walls were high, made of precious stones, each one reflecting a different color, creating an indescribable spectacle of light and shine. In the center of the city, a river of crystal-clear waters flowed, meandering through gardens full of flowers and trees of all types. On the banks of this river, majestic trees grew. Their leaves danced with a subtle glow, and their fruits exuded a sweet scent, like honey. There was music in the air. It didn't come from a single place, but it seemed to be part of the very essence of that place. I couldn't tell if they were instruments or voices, but the melody was so pure that I felt every cell of my being vibrate with it. People walked around, all dressed in bright white robes. Some were gathered in groups, talking and laughing. Others seemed to be singing or simply contemplating the beauty around them. But the most impressive thing was what I saw on their faces. Pure, complete happiness. There was no sadness. There was no fear. There was no pain. Tears ran down my face. Is this real? My voice came out shaky. Jesus nodded. More real than anything you've ever experienced on earth? I didn't know how, but every fiber of my being knew he spoke the truth. This place was not a dream. It was reality. We walked around the city. As we passed, some people looked at me and smiled. Some seemed to recognize me, although I couldn't tell who they were. But one figure caught my attention. A woman with gray hair and eyes full of tenderness came towards me. My heart raced. Grandma Margaret? She opened her arms and enveloped me in a warm hug. Her touch was real. The smell was the same as when I was a child and cuddled in her lap. My girl, she whispered. I cried like a child. She held my face in her hands and looked me in the eyes. You always belonged here. I wanted to ask so many things. I wanted to know if she had missed me, if she knew the difficulties we faced without her. But before I could speak, Jesus gently touched my shoulder. There is still more for you to see. In the distance, on the golden horizon, something grand shone like a beacon, a father's house, and I was about to see something that would change everything forever. Jesus walked ahead of me and I followed, still in shock at everything I was seeing. The golden glow of the city reflected on my skin, and each step seemed to fill me with more energy and life. The air there was not like on earth. It was pure, light, as if it carried a soft scent of flowers and honey. Soon, We arrived at a crystal bridge that spanned a river so pure it seemed made of liquid light, the river of life. I stood still, fascinated, watching how the water flowed with indescribable smoothness, emitting a blue and gold glow. When I looked closer, I saw something impossible. The river reflected more than just images. It showed memories. I leaned over, scanning the surface. In the reflection, I saw myself as a child, running through the green fields of my grandmother Margaret's house. I saw the moment I became a nurse, my wedding day to Ethan, the birth of Lily and Connor. My heart sank. This river contains the essence of life. It flows from the very throne of God. Jesus said, his voice full of softness, "Every soul that comes here drinks from these waters and is filled with eternal peace." Almost without realizing it, I knelt on the edge of the bridge and touched the surface of the river. The instant my fingers touched the water, I felt an intense heat course through my body, as if infinite energy was flowing through me. A wave of love and understanding invaded my mind. We things. I saw God's plan for humanity, the interconnectedness of all lives, the impact of the choices we make. I saw how each sincere prayer ascended like light to this place, how every act of kindness, no matter how small, echoed across the dimensions. I cried, not out of sadness, but out of a love so deep that it seemed to overflow from my chest. I never imagined something like this. I whispered. Jesus smiled and pointed to the riverbank. "Look over there." My eyes followed his direction, and then I saw it. An immense tree grew on the banks of the river, its branches reaching towards the sky like open arms. Its leaves glowed an intense green, and on its branches, fruits of all colors swayed gently in the breeze. It was a tree of life. It bears fruit 12 times a year, one for each month. Its leaves heal the nations. As Jesus spoke, I saw people picking the fruits and eating them, their faces lighting up with indescribable peace and joy. I saw angels collecting leaves and taking them away, as if they were distributing their healing to other places. My mind could barely process the magnitude of what I was witnessing. "So, there's no more disease here? Is there no pain?" I asked, still perplexed. Jesus nodded. "Nothing unclean can enter here. Pain belongs to the world you came from. Here, there is only fullness." I couldn't believe it. All the years I spent as a nurse, holding the trembling hands of dying patients, seeing the suffering in the families' eyes, and now, before me, was the answer to all those prayers. The sky, it was real, and it was much more than I had ever imagined, but something told me there was more to see. Jesus reached out to me. "Now, I'm going to take you to the Father's house." My heart raced. I was about to see God's own home. Jesus held my hand, and the moment he did so, I felt my body being enveloped by an indescribable feeling of love and safety. It was as if my entire being was vibrating at a higher frequency, as if I was becoming part of that divine light. The scenario around us began to change. The glorious city was left behind as we advanced along a path made of what looked like pure liquid crystal, sparkling with gold and silver tones. Ahead, a monumental structure appeared, a Father's house. I couldn't see it completely because it was huge, bigger than anything that could exist on Earth. Its walls were made of a substance I couldn't describe, not stone, not glass, but it glowed as if it had been forged by light itself. There was a huge gate in front of us, but as soon as Jesus approached, it opened without anyone needing to touch it. We enter. The interior was even more magnificent. There was infinite runners, all full of perfectly aligned doors, each one emanating a unique glow. I could hear soft voices singing in the distance, a heavenly harmony that filled the air with unparalleled peace. My heart was beating fast. "What is this place?" I asked, unable to hide my emotion. Jesus looked at me tenderly. "This is the Father's house, and everyone who arrives here has a place prepared for them." He stopped in front of a door and smiled. "This is yours." My eyes widened. With hesitation, I touched the door. It was solid, but at the same time it seemed to pulse with life. As soon as my hand touched it, it gently opened, revealing an environment that left me breathless. Era perfect. The space in front of me was both simple and grand. The colors were soft but vibrant. There was furniture, but it was not like that on Earth. They seemed sculpted by the very essence of light. Everything there gave me peace and joy. And then, I saw something that made me put my hand over my mouth in shock. The walls were covered in records of my life. There were pictures showing moments when I helped patients in the hospital. I saw the day I consoled a mother who had lost her son, the moment I held the hand of an elderly man who was leaving. Every act of love and compassion was registered there. And then I saw books, stacked on a shelf. I walked over and grabbed one of them. On the cover, my own name. Jesus approached. "These are your prayers." My legs almost gave out. I flipped through the pages and saw, clearly, every prayer I've ever said in my life, even the ones I thought no one had heard, even the ones I whispered in despair, thinking they were being thrown into the void. They were all here. My tears fell uncontrollably. Jesus approached and placed his hand on my shoulder. "Nothing you did in love has been forgotten. Every gesture, every word, every plea, all of this echoes in eternity." I cried, but not out of sadness. It was a cry of relief, of gratitude, of a love so great that my heart could barely contain it. But before I could speak, Jesus looked at me sweetly. "There is more for you to see." The door closed behind us, and we followed a new path. My spirit knew that the next revelation would change everything forever. We were going to great heavenly banquet. I walked alongside Jesus, still trying to absorb everything I had seen. My heart was filled with indescribable peace, but at the same time, I felt like there was so much more to discover. The path before us seemed to expand, and suddenly we found ourselves in front of a huge room, whose gates were open, inviting us to enter. As soon as we crossed the entrance, my breath hitched. It was a colossal hall, full of long tables that seemed to stretch to infinity. The tables were covered in sparkling white tablecloths, and on them were golden goblets and plates of fruit and bread that exuded an aroma so pure that just the smell seemed to nourish my soul. Had people everywhere, crowds of radiant faces, wearing white robes, talking, laughing, hugging each other. I could feel the joy vibrating in the air, a genuine love that connected every soul in that place. A soft melody filled the room, but it didn't come from instruments. It was as if God's very presence was singing, enveloping everything in heavenly harmony. I stood still, absorbing the scene, until a familiar voice echoed among the crowd. "My girl." I turned around, and my heart almost stopped. Before me, walking with a bright smile, was my grandmother Margaret. She looked so young. Her gray hair had been replaced with soft silver waves. Her skin was radiant, and her eyes sparkled with a vitality I had never seen before. "Grandfather." My voice came out as a whisper. Before I could think, she was already hugging me. Her hug was real. The same lavender scent that I remembered from childhood. The same affection in the touch. I cried. "I missed you so much." My voice broke. She held my face in her hands, smiling tenderly. "I've never been away, my dear. I was always by your side. You just couldn't see me." My tears fell freely. I didn't know what to say. Suddenly I heard another voice. "Callista!" I turned around and saw a man coming towards me. My heart accelerated. Era Daniel, a friend I had lost in a car accident years ago. He looked so healthy, so vibrant, different from the bruised body I saw in the hospital that night. He laughed and hugged me. "You came." "Daniel," I began, still trying to understand it all. "I thought I would never see you again." He smiled. "Now you know. Death is not the end. Never was." My chest filled with inexplicable love. I wanted to stay there forever, surrounded by the people I loved, participating in that eternal celebration. Jesus watched me with a serene smile. "This is a glimpse of what's to come, but your journey is not over yet." My heart sank. I can't stay." His expression softened. "There's something else you need to see." And then, suddenly, the room began to fade away, and a new scene appeared in front of me. One throne colossal appeared on the horizon, shining like 1,000 suns. Before him, crowds were gathered, waiting. The judgment of souls. It was about to start. The banquet hall disappeared around me, and suddenly, I found myself in an immense space, far larger than anything that could exist on Earth. It wasn't just a place. It was an entire dimension, dominated by a presence that made my soul shudder. In front of me stood a colossal throne, so bright that I could barely look directly at it. His light was not just intense, it vibrated with absolute power, radiating an indescribable holiness. The surrounding crowd was countless. There were people from every nation, every time in history, all waiting before that throne. Some had expressions of peace and reverence, Others were visibly terrified. One absolute silence hovered in the air. Jesus was next to me, and his expression was serious. "What is happening?" I asked, feeling an uneasiness growing inside me. "Judgment has arrived." My heart raced. In the center of that grand scene, a voice echoed through space. Not an ordinary voice, but a sound that filled everything, resonating within each soul present. Now is the time when everything will be revealed. No life, no thought, no action remained hidden. The words were not of condemnation, but of absolute truth. I watched, unable to look away, as giant books appeared before the throne. Its pages opened, and each name recorded there shone like golden fire. Each person who approached the throne had his own life revealed in front of everyone. I saw scenes form in the air, moments that were forgotten, words that were never spoken aloud, hidden gestures of kindness or evil. Everything was there, clear as daylight. There were those who they knelt and cried with gratitude. They were enveloped in a radiant glow and welcomed into a heavenly realm, their faces filled with indescribable joy. But then I saw the others. There were people who, upon seeing their lives revealed, tried to flee, but there was nowhere to run. They struggled, they screamed, they tried to argue, but the pages of the books showed your choices. And then, something terrible happened. They were separated. An invisible barrier enveloped them, and darkness began to surround them. It was like an absence of everything. Absence of love, absence of light, absence of hope. I felt despair rising within me. "Sir," my voice came out shaky, "this cannot be the end of them. They can't be left like this." Jesus' eyes filled with sadness. This was never the Father's desire, but he does not force anyone to accept it. Love needs to be chosen. My heart hurt. I wanted to scream at those souls, tell them to repent, to cry out to God, but something inside me knew that they had already made their decisions in life. Jesus looked me in the eyes. "Now you understand the urgency of your mission?" My mind was still spinning from everything I had just seen. How could I go back and tell people this? How could I convince them that every choice, every thought, mattered forever? But before I could speak, Jesus touched my hand and pointed to the horizon. There is still more. The scenery changed again, and then I saw something that made my heart soar with hope. The new earth. When the trial ended, I felt a crushing weight inside me. What I had just witnessed was something I could never forget. The pain of souls separated from the presence of God, the joy of those who were received into eternity. All of that burned inside my being. But then, Jesus touched my shoulder, and in an instant, everything changed. The scenery around us dissolved like mist in the sun, and before me, a new world emerged. My eyes widened. The first thing I noticed was the light. It did not come from a sun, but seemed to emanate from everywhere. The sky was not blue like Earth's, but gold and pink, vibrant, as if it were always at sunrise. There was an indescribable peace in the air. In front of me stretched a glorious landscape, so beautiful that my words could never describe it. Crystal clear rivers flowed between hills covered in fields of brilliant flowers, colors I had never seen before. Immense trees stood tall, their branches laden with golden and silver fruits. I saw animals of all types, living in harmony. Lions resting beside lambs, birds with sparkling plumage singing heavenly melodies. The air was pure, light, and when I took a deep breath, I felt something inexplicable, as if every cell in my body was filled with new life. "What is this place?" My voice was barely a whisper. Jesus smiled beside me. "This is the new earth, the world restored, without pain, without suffering, without death." My legs gave way. I looked around and saw people. They walked through the gardens, some laughing and talking, others singing in adoration, others simply marveling at the beauty of the place. There was no sadness. There was no fear. Man has always imagined heaven as a place where nothing happens anymore, where everything is static, but heaven is movement, learning, creation. Here, each soul continues to grow, explore, develop the gifts it received from the Father. I saw a city on the horizon, bright like the New Jerusalem, but different. Here the redeemed will build their homes. They will take care of creation as it was in the beginning. Tears fell down my face. So, is this real? Is paradise real? Jesus looked at me tenderly. More real than anything you've ever experienced on earth. I wanted to stay. I wanted to explore. I wanted to learn. I wanted to dive into this new world. But then, I felt a change in the air. Something inside me began to pull, like an invisible thread pulling me back. I looked at Jesus, alarmed. What is happening? He held my hands, and his expression became serious but full of love. You can't stay. Not yet. My chest tightened. But I want it. My voice sounded pleading. I don't want to go back. Jesus inclined his head. But your mission is not over yet. Before I could protest, I felt my body being pulled back. The light around me began to fade. The new earth was moving away, the sound of the waters and the songs disappearing, and in an instant, I was falling back into the darkness, falling back to earth. The fall was sudden and overwhelming. I felt like I was being sucked back into a small, unconfined space, a brutal shock after the immensity of the sky. The warmth and peace of the new earth were gone, replaced by a dense, heavy feeling. I heard voices, distorted at first, as if they came from far away. A continuous, insistent sound beeped next to me. She's coming back. My God, she's coming back. I blinked. Excruciating pain shot through my chest, and an overwhelming feeling of weakness washed over me. The white ceiling and flashing appliances around me told me where I was. The hospital. I was back. My eyelids trembled. My entire body hurt, as if I had been crushed by a ton of concrete. There were tubes in my mouth. My arms were full of needles and wires. My chest rose and fell with difficulty, each breath feeling like a monumental effort. But I was alive. I heard sobbing. My eyes, still cloudy, moved to the side and saw Ethan. My husband was sitting next to the bed, holding my hand as if he never wanted to let go. His eyes were red, swollen, marked by sleepless nights. Callista, his voice broke, and he squeezed my hand tightly. My God, you came back to us. My tears started to fall. I wanted to say so many things. I wanted to tell him everything I saw, everything I learned about the New Jerusalem, the Tree of Life, the Judgment, the New Earth. But what came out was a faint whisper. I saw Jesus. Ethan's eyes widened. Before he could respond, the door opened, and 2 doctors and a nurse rushed in, checking my vitals. One of them, Dr. Marcus Holloway, looked shocked. "This is impossible," he muttered to himself as he checked my pulse. "She had been in a coma for 3 days. We had to revive her at the scene of the accident. How can she be awake and conscious?" I knew how, but none of them were ready to hear the truth. In the days that followed, my recovery was described as miraculous. What doctors expected would take months happened in weeks. I spoke with the nurses, with my family, with everyone who came to visit me, and I did. I told him about the indescribable peace of being in the presence of Jesus, over the streets of gold and the rivers of light, about the love that consumed all pain, about the prayers I saw recorded in heaven, about the reality of judgment and the urgency of our choices. Some listened with tears in their eyes, others doubted, but no one left my presence without feeling something different. I wasn't afraid of death. You knew where he was going. And more than ever, I knew what was my mission on earth. Tell the world that heaven is real. May Jesus wait for us all, and that eternity is much closer than we imagine. If you liked this beautiful spiritual testimony, leave a like, comment on your impressions, subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to activate the notification bell to watch each new video and help us spread this message to a greater number of people. Until next time.